Hello, Good Dirt listeners, and welcome to this really special episode. Our good friend Bailey Van Tassel, who has the Garden Culture podcast, had us as guests on her show just a few short months ago. And we loved this conversation so much, and we thought it was a really fun insight into our story and our relationship working together as mother and daughter. Rarely do we find ourselves on the other side of the mic, so to speak. And so we thought that this was really fun and we wanted to share this with you. If you don't already listen, the Garden Culture podcast is a great place to go for gardening tips and resources. And Bailey is so much fun to follow on social media as well. We've been friends and collaborators for a while now, and we're so excited to share this episode with you. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Garden Culture Podcast, hosted by me, Bailey Van Tassel. I'm a self-taught gardener, busy wife and mother, and small business owner on a mission to live a garden-inspired life. Each month, we will explore what's going on in the garden and fields, as well as get to know incredible people who infuse their own lives with the magic of the garden. For more information on any techniques, recipes, or ideas mentioned here, please visit us at baileyvantassel.com/podcast. Hello, ladies. How are you?
Hi.
Good. So happy to be here.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to have you too. And I'm so excited to get this multifaceted story. I was thinking about the two of you and when I first was introduced to your brand, Lady Farmer, and then uncovering who was behind this adorable and lovely brand and what it stood for. And there was so much meat on that bone where I was like, okay, first, this is a cute brand. And I think you guys had at one point sold maybe like overalls.
Yeah.
And like cute merch. And I was like, okay, I'm vibing with this. Like this brand speaks to me, obviously. And then I got to know you guys as mother and daughter team. And now you have this whole vision. And actually, I wanted to ask before we even go into, because I want to hear more about your guys' story. What was the original vision when you guys collaborated? Who started the conversation and what was the original like vision mission for you guys?
Emma, do you want to start that?
You do. Some point of contention. Me. Just kidding. It was my idea. No, just kidding. I do think that I did start the conversation though.
I think you did. Yes. To be fair.
About the business, but obviously maybe not obviously if you don't know this, but my mom, and you'll hear this more later, like all growing up, she was the original, like, I want to farm. I want to live closer to the land. I want to do these things. And we also, like, I grew up in suburbia. So we had this life and it was, but mom was super vocal about like, I want to live this way. And then it wasn't until actually I even graduated from college. We went from suburbs to the city when I was in high school. And then in college, my parents found this property outside the city and made that transition. And that was sort of fun because I was an adult by then. And I was able to like watch my parents do this fun, like third chapter kind of thing. And everyone was really excited. That was like right around when Omnivore's Dilemma came out, the book, Michael Pollan book, and everyone like, it was kind of the beginning of this wave, right? So we were excited about it. And I was, I think, past the point of adolescence where it was like things my parents did were weird. And I was like, actually, that's cool that my parents are doing that. So they were living this like back to the land life in not quite retirement age, but post kids. And I was doing my post college sort of what am I doing with my life? And I watched the documentary about fast fashion called The True Cost. And it really affected me. And I immediately, I don't know if it's in the movie, if it says it explicitly, or I put this together myself, but I was like, this is crazy how related this is to the food movement that like I'm so familiar with now because my parents are going through it. So I think I started that conversation with my mom, like, Mom, I saw this movie. And I was really excited about it because where my mom is really interested in farming and gardening, I'm definitely more excited about fashion and making clothes. And I was like, there's such good like symmetry, synchronicity here. So we just got really excited. And then I don't know who said it first, but the idea was, let's make a line of sustainably produced clothes for women who are on this journey of like going back to the land. And I think we Lady Farmer, the name kind of came to us. I think my mom said Lady Farmer, and then I said that's a good name for a company, but that's the debate part.
My mother and I have debates about like who actually chose my children's names, and we have these similar debates, and they get very, very heated. So I understand.
That's funny.
Well, and I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So also, are we doing, is this video? Are you
No.
going to use the video on this? Oh, okay. So I can sip my tea.
Oh yeah, girl.
Okay. So
Always with the cute waffle knit on Mary. Oh, is that an LL Bean? Don't tell me that it is.
gosh, it is LL Bean, but it's like 100% organic. And I wear this so much. This is my uniform. It's 100% organic cotton. It's just the perfect thing to throw on every day. It is my uniform. And so this year I bought a brown one. I just love it so much.
Wait,
and
okay.
Yeah.
Before I even interrupt you again, at some point, maybe let's loop around and talk about Martha's new line at Tractor Supply. I want a hot take if you guys have seen it. I'm upset, actually.
Oh, I'm going to have a lot to say about this. Oh, Lord. You'll have to tell me that.
Do you know what she's talking about? I have to look it up. I don't. They have Tractor Supply in the chat.
Okay, I can imagine. My brain is going like, okay, yeah, I want to talk about that. You can tell us and then get our reaction. But okay, I just want to jump about the Lady Farmer thing. Out here in this community, we live in an agricultural reserve. And so there's a lot of farm action, and there are a lot of young women that are actually, very interested in farming. We have, vegetable farmers and flower farmers and young entrepreneurs, trying to do this. We have CSAs, we have all kinds of stuff like that going on. And they became our friends, and so we had this little community, and Emma lived out here at the farm for a while and has become very close friends with all of them. And so they just, they're our Lady Farmer friends. So it was a very natural thing to come up with that name. And it just seemed to fit so well. And also it sort of ties in like metaphorically, this gets into the weeds a little bit, but, we really, this feminine energy of the earth and growing things and gardening. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to touch it on that, and it with the Lady Farmer theme. And our, you mentioned the clothing, our kind of foundational piece was the Demeter tunic, at which I still wear mine today, and someday we'll make them again, maybe. But Demeter was the goddess of agriculture in Greek mythology. And
I love that.
Humanity depended on Demeter, for their food. And Demeter's daughter, Persephone, was kidnapped by Hades, god of the underworld. And when, it's a whole story, but to sum it up, she was so grief-stricken when her daughter was abducted by Hades that she stopped making the crops grow, and humanity was going to starve to death until Zeus, the king of the gods, intervened and went to Hades and said, you have got to let her go home, or everybody's going to starve because Demeter won't let the food grow. And so Hades compromised. He said, well, she can go home, but while she was here, she ate 6 pomegranate seeds. So she has to stay here for a month for each pomegranate seed. So she's there in the winter in the dark months, and then she goes in the spring home to her mom for the 6 months of spring and summer, and that's when things grow. So that's how they explain the seasons in Greek mythology. So it's a mother-daughter thing, really taps into the idea of the earth and the feminine energy, and it also ties into our community and our friends. So it was a really cool name.
I absolutely love that so deeply much. Greek mythology is everything. I took a Greek mythology class in college, and it was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
It's just, I love that. And I actually had not heard that. That's amazing. Well, and
Yeah.
that really beautifully brings me to a question I have for you, Mary, which is, what was your childhood like growing up, and how was the seed sort of planted in you? And it sounds like obviously there's this sort of third chapter where like you're done having kids and you did sort of this return to land. But when you were a child, was that baked into you somehow, or were you raised with that a little bit?
Well, I grew up in a small town in Tennessee, in East Tennessee. And I had what they're now calling, in retrospect, they're calling a free range childhood.
Yeah.
We grew up.
But that was also part of the time, I think. I mean, it was
absolutely. Yes.
the 60s.
The time. It was, yes. I grew up in the 60s, in the 70s. And, we lived in a neighborhood. There were a ton of kids, and we could just run around and play. We would, just run all over the countryside. We would run down the hill to the ravine and play in the creek and run across the fields on the other side of it. And there was horse stables down there, and we'd go down there and play around with the horses, and just, we could be gone all day. And as long as we were home for dinner, everything was okay. And we rode our bikes everywhere. And gosh, I look back on that and I think, wow, my mom just sort of, she kind of knew where we were. And, if we went to somebody's house, we should call and say, hey, I'm over at so-and-so's house or whatever. But there was a lot of running around barefoot in the bushes, in the woods, in the creek, just all kinds of crazy stuff, and building forts and climbing trees. And it was great. Okay. So, I grew up outside a lot, and I remember just as a child feeling very connected to the seasons and the seasonal changes. And, I remember funny things like we were playing hide and seek. I would be like inside a bush and like, what kind of bush is this? And look at that flower, and just sort of, being immersed in it. And so, and we did not, we were in a neighborhood. It wasn't like, we did farming or anything like that. My parents did garden, but they did flowers and ornamentals and things like that. But so many people around us did grow food, vegetables. It was a real common hobby. And as anyone who has a vegetable garden knows, lots of times you end up with lots and lots to give away. And so it was almost a joke in the summer that people would bring us all kinds of food because there was excess in the gardens.
Yeah.
And so we ate really, we ate from neighbors' gardens. And my dad was a doctor, and his patients would bring him all kinds of stuff, from their garden. Big gardens were very common. So, in that way, I grew up with, vegetable gardening and growing your own food and everything, a very common thing. Although my parents were just into flowers, and that was the thing.
Well,
so, yeah.
I remember you telling me a story, and like, this is kind of fast forward. Now you have Emma and you're volunteering at school. And I think you're telling me a story about vermicomposting, and like the worms escaped in the classroom.
Yes.
Because I had a vermicompost accident in my garage that was similar, and it was like really, really gnarly. And so what led you to that place? Because it sounds like now once you have kids, I would describe it as like maybe you're kind of a crunchy mom. Like would you say so, Emma?
Yeah. Yes. We had a French foreign exchange student one year, and she was appalled. The irony here is just so rich. But she was just like appalled at the lack of junk food in the house because she was so excited to come to America from France.
She's like, finally, Cheetos.
Yeah. But she would, and the Kingsley house was like known as like there were no good snacks at the Kingsley house. Like if you're trying to get snacks, go up elsewhere. So the joke is that the apples that Mrs. Kingsley had were this big because they were organic, and they were this big, and it was crazy. Like, and that was like, organic. Can you believe it? This big. That's like just a funny story about people. Yeah. Like, and my mom she'd always be, like doing baking experiments, like with no sugar, like, don't worry, these cookies have applesauce in them, so they don't need oil or sugar. Like that kind
Oh
of
my
stuff.
God, I love it.
I mean, no, not your fault, Mom. Product of the time. It was the 90s. Like,
But I mean, is that just how you are, or were you influenced in some way to be really conscious?
Well, I don't know. I remember, when I grew up and I, went to college and everything, and then I got out on my own and was,
you were like vegetarian for a while.
Well, I did that for a while. Yeah. And, I did my own cooking and baking and stuff. I was just really interested in that stuff. And, I lived in Atlanta, and there was a little natural food co-op there that I went to all the time, and, had the organic food, and it was Rainbow Grocery. I think it's still there. And I, bought cookbooks there, and I just tried to eat a simpler, wholesome way from this is before I had kids or anything. I remember my dad coming to visit me one time, and I took him to they had a little restaurant there, and that was back when they started putting sprouts on sandwiches. Believe it or not, that was a new thing at some point.
Mm-hmm. My mom went through that phase with the sprouts. I remember that.
And Dad goes, "What is this grass on my sandwich?" So yes, I was kind of that way. So anyway, I
just think naturally, yeah.
Yeah, that's just how you are.
So fast forward, got married, had kids. We ended up in the early 90s in the northern suburbs of Atlanta. And at that time, there was a tremendous commercial and residential building boom. And we just moved right into it. And the location where we moved at first was really pretty rural. But it very, very quickly, like week after week, year after year, we could just see the land around us just being demolished. Entire wooded areas, horse fields. There was a lot of equestrian stuff up there at one point. It was the country, little country houses. All that stuff would just be filled up with shopping centers and neighborhoods, subdivisions, just happening so fast. And our own subdivision, it was built into a very lovely area, and we moved in. There were so many houses, and we knew more houses were going to be built. But after a while, it became just very distressing because they would just keep taking it down, these wooded areas. It's not that we didn't know it was going to be happening. What I think is that I didn't realize how it was going to impact me. Mm-hmm. Just lots and lots of destruction of the land all around. And, you can't really criticize it because we were living in it.
Well, and I feel like these moments get pitched as progress, right? So you're like, oh, I'm moving into this beautiful new neighborhood, and we're making progress, and we're making room, and it's getting developed. There's going to be beautiful new schools and rec centers, and you're thinking in your mind that the marketing is like progress and, I don't know, excitement, but you're watching it and it's actually translating as destruction, and you're like, oh, this doesn't feel like progress,
Well, I will say that it was a great community, lots of great schools, lots of fun people from all over, other countries and stuff. It was, it was a quickly developing area. So, it was interesting, fun place to live. It really was. And the kids had great opportunities in the schools, all kinds of, just so much going on in that way. But there was this underbelly of just watching what was happening to the land around us that affected me deeply in a way that I don't think I could have predicted. Mm-hmm. Because I think that kind of growth was kind of unprecedented in my life. I'd never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I sort of developed this this kind of sensitivity to it. And that led me to interests and activities that were kind of trying to counter all of that. And one of the things that it led me to was to become the head of what they called the Green School at the kids' elementary school, the environmental education piece. And it was all volunteer, and it was extra. It wasn't part of the curriculum. And it was sort of up to those of us that were doing it to kind of, make it up as we went along. And we did stuff. And that vermiculture story comes out of those years. Yes. You want me to tell the vermiculture story?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. So the environmental ed program, the Green School, as it was called, was sort of seen as, people liked it, but it was sort of seen as extra. And, we had to be careful not to, put too much work on the teachers. And so there was some, it was encouraged, but at the same time, there was a little resistance to it. So this was my son's 4th grade class, and I wanted to build the worm bin. And so this took some convincing. Worms, you're going to have worms in the school, and that sounds kind of dirty. And, so I explained the whole thing, and, we're going to do it. It's going to be great. They're going to be contained in this thing. And so we did it. We had this big activity, and, we got the big bin, and we did the holes, and we did the layers in the dirt, and showed the kids how to, feed it breadcrumbs, feed the worms with breadcrumbs, ordered the worms, introduced them in. It was all great. And then then you leave the worm bin there, and so they can grow worms, and you can look at it every now and then and see how many worms or how the worm population's increasing. It's very exciting.
Well, and you see the dirt, like the dirt that the worms are making, I think is the cool part. It's not just like, for anyone who doesn't know.
The worm castings. Yeah, it is. You can really see the dirt transformed from like you do,
yes.
soil, and then you do like a brown layer, like dead leaves,
like
and
newspaper.
Yeah. And then eventually it turns into this really fine, it's worm poop, but it's, it's like a really fine soil. It doesn't smell bad. It's like a humus,
Yeah,
it's really cool.
It's really fun. And so one day, I guess one of the kids had overwatered, the bin. And so overnight, and they'd gotten too wet. And so overnight, they had crawled out the holes. So the teacher comes in the next morning. There's worms all over the room. And so, of course, I got the phone call, and there was all this, see, I told you so. This is going to be a mess. And
like a nightmare. It kind of was a nightmare.
How this happened. This wasn't supposed to happen, and all that sort of thing. So, yeah, that's a memorable story.
It is a little bit of a nightmare, because when this happened to me, and of course, I don't have to take on the wrath of like the administration of my kid's school, but my husband comes into the garage to like go to work in his car, and it is just carnage. Not only have the worms all escaped, they've died in the garage. And now I'm like, I'm not a good steward of the earthworm now. I have survivor's guilt, basically, because I've just, it's a mass grave in there. It stinks. It's like, I have to clean it up. And actually, like, dead squishy worms are kind of hard to clean up a little bit. It was just not, not the vision.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All you future vermiculturists out there,
definitely should still be worm composting, though. Just
you should do it. Just don't overwater your bin. And if this should happen, you might want to have it in a place where it's no big deal if the worms get out.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm curious too, Emma, for you growing up, did you feel like, oh my gosh, my mom, or were you into it too? Like, I think most of us, I feel like a mother-daughter relationship is unique. Like, I feel like it's just, it's an eye roll. Like, everything from the daughter looking up to the mom is always going to have that component. It's timeless. Like, it's how it is. But what was it like from your perspective? Because now it's very cool. Like, you're so on trend.
Yeah. I can't even tell you. My mom somehow found out what yoga was before anyone else in our neighborhood, and started doing like yoga classes. And I would she would come back and like explain to people like yoga. Like my mom is so ahead of the curve on everything. So it's just so funny.
Though, I feel like, Mary, you have this childlike confidence. Like it's this, like you would be like, we're doing yoga, and you're just excited about it, and you're just like you're not nervous to be the one teaching everybody yoga and introducing the concept, because I feel like you're so just lighthearted and happy about it, and it just makes sense to you. And I love that quality because it's so endearing, but it's also it's a very quiet confidence where it's like you have a little bit of a like soothsayerness where you're kind of seeing these waves come before anyone else, and you have the confidence just to be like, this is what we're doing.
It's so true.
It's so funny because
she would never see it that way, but yeah.
I just remember this day where I don't know what gave me the idea, but I literally remember thinking in my head, I think there's this thing called yoga. And I want to find out about it. And
it's like before the internet. It was like 1997.
I went to the yellow pages.
Yes.
Do you know the yellow pages?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm just grateful you didn't end up in like one of those yoga cults by accident when they were really like trying to pitch.
Could have. I had contact with some, let me tell you. But
yes.
But I literally looked up yoga in the yellow pages, and I called the number, and someone answered the phone, and I said, I want to learn about yoga. And this woman goes, oh, okay. Where do you live? And I told her, we had a clubhouse. It was one of those developments, she goes, I'll come teach a class there. Da-da. And so she came, and we had a class, and it went on for years and years. And then I went and got my yoga certification, and I taught yoga. I taught yoga in my basement. I built a yoga studio in that basement in that house in Georgia and taught classes. So that was a whole chapter. Gosh. Yeah. So
your yoga era.
The yoga era.
Yeah.
I still see where I am right now in this attic
block. A little yoga left. So anyways, all that to say, I love that. And you said it well,
I love that.
Bailey, that, of course there's like the eye rolling, and especially I would say just like from my memory, this is awful, but what I remember most being frustrated by is like the lack of junk food snacks, which of course I like appreciate now and whatever. And when you're a kid, that's just all your friends have all the Gushers and stuff at lunch. So like you're going to be annoyed that you don't have that. But no, besides that, like we also, both my parents were super into camping. So we went camping a lot, and they really instilled that love in us, like being outside from an early age. And that was just like part of it, like what we did. Like I remember like coming home from school on a Friday afternoon, the routine was like Dad would be putting the last thing on top of the Volvo, and we'd like drive into the mountains. And that was like, oh wow, fun. Like we liked doing that.
Yeah.
So I think that was a big part of it, where we just like they just cultivated an appreciation for nature in us from early on. And also both my parents were really good about like just sowing an awareness of like our privilege and how we did not live a normal life. Nothing around us was normal. And, we were exposed to like a lot of different things. So I think in those ways, I was always very appreciative, and I was only super annoyed at like just the lack of junk food. But yeah.
I'm going to jump in here with one more green school story. There's a lot of them, but we had planned this trash-free lunch day in Emma's class. I think she was third grade. And back in those days, you sent out mimeograph things. I don't think that was even before we emailing.
Is that what memo is short for? I've never heard that word.
Yeah. Mimeograph, the machine where you would copy.
She does this. She says words. I've been her daughter for 33 years. I don't know what she's talking about.
Yeah,
mimeograph.
So he would send notes home, preparing people, like coaching people on. Oh my gosh, how are we supposed to pack a lunch without trash? So it kind of took some preparation to talking about for weeks. So they had this day designated, and that day was the same day that I was leaving on a trip, and. So I remember I flew to this place. I got out of the airplane. I got picked up by my ride, and we were zooming along. And I thought, oh my gosh, I left home this morning and I did not pack Emma's trash-free lunch. And we hadn't heard the term zero waste yet. This was trash-free lunch. And I had the whole school doing this, and Emma's going to show up with this lunch with all kinds of trash in it. And I was horrified. And I called home as soon as I could, and I said, oh, Anna, I forgot your trash-free lunch. And she goes, oh, I did it. She had gotten up this third grade, made her own trash-free lunch. So I know it was sinking in. Got it. It wasn't just me. So I love that. I love that example of like, she'd been absorbing it. She knew it was the day, and she carried through, and so I love that story.
I love that.
So it's all this stuff is sinking in.
Well, yes, I love that. And I think when you do come at it from a place of like, it's sort of in earnest, like it's coming from a place of just like, you truly just passionate about this. I feel like children see that and they feel that too. And it's like hard to not love the truth in that. So that kind of brings me to the next question, which is, so you guys come up, now we're going to come back to the deciding we're going to do a sustainable clothing line for lady farmers. What was that process like of trying to embark on this journey where it's like you guys are trying to understand the industry and make something that's really sustainable and really high integrity? Was that hard? Was it easy? Like what was that like?
It was a hellscape. I'm just kidding.
No, we did that thing. It
was insane.
We were like, oh, we're going to produce a line of clothing.
Yeah, we were like, this will be fun, like a fun thing to do together.
Yeah, like I'm gonna get my sketchbook out and like,
yeah, literally. I happened to be like in between jobs, and so I was really able to be like, okay, this is what I'm doing right now. I was like 26 and just like, cool, I'll do this till the next thing or whatever. And my mom was just as excited about it and had, the energy and it was fine. But it was a huge learning curve, and we really jumped in. There's like a few major things that we did. Like one of the first things we did, which I'm glad we did it, even though we probably, in hindsight, wouldn't have been the smartest thing, but I'm glad we did it. We went to this huge trade show in California for fashion.
No,
Magic,
in Las Vegas.
Sorry, in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Same. I think Magic, as an organization, is based. It's like the men's apparel something in California.
I've been to the Magic trade show though in Vegas, believe it or not, and it is like the trade show if you're going to be in the clothing industry.
Yes,
yeah. So we went to that and we were like, "What?" It was cute. I love this story. We were like, "Okay, we're here. We're going to source our American-made linen." So we go in like the huge conference and we're like, "Okay, where on the map is the American?" Made in America. And it was like, the whole thing, the Made in America was like 4 booths. And then we go to the Made in America section, and then it was like, it was like 2 consulting firms. Like maybe there was 1 fabric, but it was like upholstery fabric from the Midwest, and it was not like organic or anything. So we were like, what? So that was, it's just funny that like, that's what it took for us to recognize the issue. And then sort of from there, it snowballed into like, oh, this is going to be like a different thing than what we were thinking, but we like went through with it anyways. So anyways, basically a full year after that, we're able to finally get it together to where we like located as much as we could people local to us who could help us with samples and tech packs and drawings and stuff like that. We thought of the things in our head, put them on paper.
We designed.
We're able to cobble together. We had this idea for like a capsule collection. We sourced the fabric, ended up not being from America because we were like, well, we got to do something here, and like that can be part of the story. Is like we learned this in the process, and it's not made in America, but it's organic. This is why we chose that, et cetera, et cetera. So, at the time, just like from who I was following in the world of like, here's how to do your own clothing line. And I'm sure that this is still going on, but brands were having a ton of success on Kickstarter. launching. So that's kind of how we were like, okay, I guess we'll just do this through Kickstarter. And we had a lot of really helpful advice and people helping us to kind of do that in the right way. I think a lot of people don't go about Kickstarter in the right way, which is it's not a money it's not a way to get money. It is actually a marketing campaign. So it's more about marketing. The money's a nice. Yeah. So we drug that out for, I think, a year. And then finally we launched the Kickstarter. And that's probably, if you feel like you found us because you thought we were a clothing brand, it's probably when you found us, because we were really pushing like, we're Lady Farmer clothes.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that had to have been obviously pre-2020. I want to say probably, right? Probably like 2018. 2017.
Yeah. I mean, you could have found us between 2017 and 2020, but yeah. 2017 was when it launched, in the end of 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So we launched, we did the fulfillment. I mean, that whole process was like so insane. The Kickstarter was very successful. We raised the money we needed to run that production. But that's not, a Kickstarter isn't a business. I mean, it can be a business model, but it's a very specific type of business model.
Sure.
But after going through that process, we both realized like that wasn't our favorite thing we ever did, was manufacturing clothing.
Yeah.
And like emails about sizing and customer, like everything that comes along with like the fulfillment of that was just like, this is not sparking joy. So we took the next couple of years to kind of be like, okay, we'll supplement with like home goods. Also, there's a ton of other brands like in the realm of sustainability. At every 6 months, there's a new amazing slow fashion sustainable brand, which was not the case in 2016.
Totally.
We felt we didn't see, like, the part of why we were like, let's do this is I didn't see brands making clothes that I wanted to wear with the ethos that I liked. So that's kind of part of why we did it. But it started happening more and more, and we were like, why don't we lift up other brands that are doing this already? And then we don't have to do it all. We can just like talk about them and educate people. And that sort of morphed into, we're doing more blogging and writing, which is more our wheelhouse anyways. We both love writing. And then funnily enough, the podcast was actually kind of a random idea we had as a stretch goal on Kickstarter. So if you've been involved with Kickstarter, that's one of the things you do is like to help you reach the next point. You say, if we raise this amount, we'll add in this thing. So in like 2017, we were like, if we get to our goal in 10 days, we'll start a podcast, which was hilarious because we did that and we're like, well, I guess we have to start a podcast now. And we literally didn't get to it until the end of 2019, right into 2020. And we were just sort of doing it to deliver on that.
Well, so then once you started the podcast, and my assumption is you fell in love with it and you guys started feeling like this was.
Yes. Right. And it just was like kind of a great combination of our natural gifts and talents and what we'd learned. And we loved connecting with people. And it was a great way to like, we had done basically what we do on the podcast, but to ourselves the prior 3 years, just like having amazing conversations and learning so much about this world. And so we were like, this is actually a super cool like platform. So basically that brings us up to 2020.
I want to
and
add
everything that happened there.
Wait, can I add? I want to add something to that discussion about the whole thing with creating the sustainable fashion line. So yeah, we were like, we decided we were going to do this, and it was like, well, how do you produce clothes? How do you manufacture clothes? We started at the very beginning. So we were talking to people and figuring it out, like every step of the way, we just figured it out. And we were like, we wanted this all sustainable. We didn't want to use any plastic. We all natural materials.
We wanted to pay everyone.
We wanted to pay
really well.
Really well.
Living
and all
wage,
all the things. And so I am so glad we went through that process. Yes, it was hard. And it turned out that it was, not something we wanted to get into long term. But see, we learned it. We were just in the nuts and bolts of what it takes to make sustainable clothing. And what we realized all that time was that people, and it's much better now, but back then, 7 years ago, people just didn't understand. They were like, why would I pay $200 for a dress? I can go to Target and get one for $16 on sale, and they just, and so we were explaining, we were trying to educate people on the issues. And it was such a huge,
and why things cost more.
Yes. And that is really hard, even still, while there are tons of, now I guess I'm seeing there's obviously sustainable and organic clothing brands, but now we're even moving into the regenerative movement, like regenerative clothing, regenerative cotton, all of that, which is different, but also sort of a buzzword, but also sort of similar. But yeah, I could imagine it's so hard to have to educate while you're trying to like live off the profits of a business and make it a high integrity business. However, absolutely great fodder for what is now your podcast, The Good Dirt, because it really does ask and answer all of those questions that I think people want to know. And I feel like that is, I consider you guys my source for like, if I want to know the sustainable factor in anything, I know you guys will kind of cover it, which I really like.
Yeah, and there was not only clothing, but food, and then the things we use every day, just general consumerism and educating people on the issues of things they buy, things they use every day.
I would say the process of going through figuring out, like, not even knowing how clothes are made, basically, besides if someone sews them at some point, or a machine does, I guess. Like going through that whole process, like manufacturing, even though it was small scale, you still have to kind of go through how things are mass produced, like changes the way that you think about everything and look at everything. And it can be applied to so many things. And like the food system is another huge one. I mean, everything is this huge system. And we say that a lot. Like The Good Dirt and Lady Farmer is about learning about these systems, these industrialized systems that are between us and our daily needs, and not necessarily making like all these moral judgments about everything, because that's exhausting and that's just another way to like get you to buy things, but more like how can we talk about and educate, and like figure out even what questions to be asking.
So that's so funny. Spoiler alert, at the end, I just wrote a book about gardening, and at the end, I kind of explain that I don't really think there is such thing as an expert. There's just such thing as someone who knows so much more. They know the questions to ask, and that is where I feel like you get led to the most sort of true information, is just you're constantly asking better questions because you become better informed, better experienced. And that is what can lead you to having sort of ownership of a subject or a task or, anything like that. And I feel like you guys are there, which brings me to, okay, so the original vision and mission was sustainable clothing. Where are you now? So you kind of, I guess, just explained that to me through the podcast, but what does that look like in terms of day to day, what you guys are doing? You have The Good Dirt, and then what else?
Oh, is this a therapy session?
Wait, actually, yes.
Well, great question.
Give it to me, girls. I'm ready.
What do you think, Mom?
Well, it's sort of it has evolved.
Yes, and it is constantly evolving.
It has evolved to the point where the podcast is our platform for talking to people and having these conversations and exposing all these issues, and hopefully raising awareness and consciousness of how we're living in this world and on the planet as consumers and as citizens. And how can we move more in the direction of living on this planet without destroying it, really, and destroying this source of all our well-being and needs and survival? Because Yeah, because that's what we're doing. Not to be doomsday, but things are happening that are not sustainable for the future.
Yeah.
Of the survival of the species. Okay, that's pretty well known out there now. So the podcast is sort of center stage. Also, I would say shares this stage is our community. And so we have an online community. People join us for more in-depth content, in-depth interaction. We have groups, we have gatherings, we have book club, we have every now and then we'll run something like Emma did Artist's Way a couple of times during this past year. And we have online.
We used to have, there was a period where we were doing in-person retreats. That was also happened between 2017 and 2020.
Oh, right.
And I think the spirit of that, even though we haven't done that again since 2020, we'd like to get back to it. But the spirit of that sort of like getting people together.
Yeah.
And celebrating these things in community is a big part of what we do. But it's hard. The reason I was giggling so much is because we do, it's a lot. Like we're trying to do a lot, and neither of us are like, we're not like business school people. Mm-hmm. We're not super like, obviously our priority isn't like making a huge profit, or we would be doing something else. So we're like constantly trying to figure out, and we have so much like excitement and so many things to talk about and to do that. Yeah. Just figuring out how to make it sustainable, like for us energetically.
Yeah. Yes. No, I mean, listen, we have similar business models, I would say. And I was just talking to a girlfriend about this where I was like, it becomes hard. So basically I would say like in this modern age of content creation, whether you're using podcasts to be your content or blogging or social media, video, YouTube, basically if you're trying to help, if you are a part of the conversation and you need to disseminate that information, it becomes tricky because there's a balance in my mind. And we were having like a heart to heart about it where it was like, the more authentic and immediate any information is for me, like the healthier it is for me, but the like less strategic it feels from a business perspective. And that's what's really hard is you're like trying to be strategic about building a brand and building a business and finding a way to like use all of the hours you put into creating the content and pursuing the passion, which I feel like, we all probably have a lot of energy for consuming and creating information around sustainability and nature and gardening and the earth and all of that. It's so enriching and exciting, but we have to try and convert that into like a way to live. And that is where it gets sort of log jammed. You're like, okay, I need to be strategic about it, but that's not really always fun, at least not for me. So
I have a great example. A great example of that is like, we're trying to produce sustainable clothing, and a high priority was to pay the people well that were in production, and also to buy the high quality fabrics. This is what it was about. I mean, this is why we were doing it. And just putting all those numbers together just created this like kind of impossible thing. Mm-hmm. Your items were going to be so expensive that, people wouldn't buy it. And so it was just such a conundrum because, and that's how it sort of became for us a demonstration of the issues. So we, now we have a really deep personal understanding of when you go into one of these stores and the t-shirt's $10 or whatever, we know that t-shirt was not $10. There are so many people down the line that are paying dearly for you to have that t-shirt for $10. But that's something that's, it's kind of hard to communicate on a large scale. So this is sort of what we're doing.
Yeah.
So we're passionate about that. We want people to understand. And when people say, why would I pay X amount of dollars for something I can get over here for way cheaper? Well, because, just sit and listen.
Well, also, the root of the thing is like, the poor thing is when we don't need to buy anything. We can all stop buying things. We can all stop making clothes.
It all already exists.
So that's kind of like the root of it.
It reminds me of like whenever I get into like a crisis of heart or I'm like having an issue, and I always think of like, I actually don't need to consume any more information. The answer is within me. And if I just took a step back and got really quiet and could like reconnect, I think I can better approach this. I think it's the same thing, I guess, with consumption. It's like, if we could all just take a step, like the answer is already here. Like we have lived all the fads. We could just rework them or just not be so beholden to them. But that does beg a question. And I have two actual questions for you guys. The first one is, then which brands do you feel like are doing it right? So if someone does want to shop as sustainably, organically, we do need like, I just have like a new body after I had my third kid. So I'm like, I need new jeans because I'm a different person at this point. Like, what do you feel like are the best brands right now? Maybe I would say top 5 that you feel like are really doing a good job. It's worth the investment.
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah, okay.
Part of our problem is we don't actually buy a ton of stuff anymore.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Okay, I'm going to mention a brand that I think probably everybody knows about, and that's Pact.
Oh, Pact.
PACT. Yeah. So, they do great marketing job, and it's all organic. The organic cotton, natural materials. I don't think they use a lot of blends. Another thing is, people understanding that fabrics, blends, synthetic blends, fabrics that are not natural materials are basically plastic. People need to understand that they are wearing plastic.
Yeah, and I don't think that's like widely known, to be totally honest with you.
Right. If you're wearing polyester,
like
any kind of
acrylic,
you're wearing plastic, and there's so many issues with that, from having it on your skin, from health issues. There's all kinds of stuff that's coming out now. Plus, when you wash that stuff, it increases microplastic pollution in our waterways, and we're all, you've heard the thing that we all eat a credit card worth of plastic every week. Have you heard that? Is that what it is, or something?
I don't know.
I don't know if that's exactly
something like that.
We're all basically eating a certain amount of plastic because
no, it's so scary, you guys.
So anyway, as a brand, I see Pact. I've ordered stuff from them.
Okay.
What confuses me about that is that, having done this myself, I don't understand how their prices are so accessible. I'm skeptical too, because brands that you see, I just want to put this out there, brands that you see everywhere and that are targeted to you, you're seeing them 7 times a day and stuff. That's because they have these insane marketing budgets. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, if that's your marketing budget, how much is actually going to your product and paying people and production? So I'm actually super skeptical of brands that I'm seeing all the time. And this has proven it might be confirmation bias, but sometimes I buy them and they're usually not as good as I thought they were going to be. It's usually a disappointment if I buy into something that's being shown to me all the time. And I have had that experience with Pact. And I will say, I love the Pact underwear. It gets holes in it immediately. So I don't actually think it's like, I wouldn't recommend it.
Well, I would say maybe it's more, maybe if you don't have brands you're super passionate about, because some of the small ones I've found, it's like I've just found them on social media, and they're priced, I would say, very inaccessibly, but they are, they're cool. They even have stores they'll have like one store and it's like in Venice, and it's like very, I know Venice is très chic when it comes to sustainability, but you kind of get to know nowadays with social media, you can get to know like the maker and stuff like that. But I guess maybe the question I should be asking is just, obviously I'm assuming you guys do a bunch of thrifting. Maybe it's more a matter of like good materials. Like you're saying, it's 100% cotton, 100% wool. Like,
I want to to this. Yeah, Emma, and go ahead. But I want to speak up.
So the rule for me is usually, especially, I get most of my stuff thrifting, and there's the good brands that you can kind of recognize that have been baked in. Maybe this is just because it's been baked into me, but like the Levi's and the Wranglers, like from the 90, like before, kind of like from a while ago, are always going to be trusty. And like the 100% cotton, obviously not everything, if you're thrifting, is going to be like organic, but it's so much better to find stuff that's already exists than to get new stuff. So yeah, I would say all natural fibers, and thrifting or vintage. I love also like supporting, I find on Instagram too, smaller vintage curators who like, yes, you're paying more than you would at a thrift store, but they're doing the work for you in finding it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I would say about, I have a hard time like giving, because I know people want that. Like they want like, okay, what should I get? But really it's, and we talk about this a lot on our podcast, you kind of have to answer that question for yourself, because you're never going to be able to like check all the boxes unless you are like growing the cotton and milling the cotton and sewing it yourself. It's just like, you have to figure out what.
Yeah. I mean, I will say like so I stopped shopping at Target over a year ago for almost everything, definitely clothing. Every once in a while, I would do like a Target pickup when it's like you're in mom mode and they'll take it out to my car. So I am guilty of that sometimes for groceries. But you realize you just didn't need it. You know, like you just kind of, I feel like when you kind of draw a line in the sand, and I'm not always that person that's like a do or die. I'm very like, I like things layered. I like it incremental. I like a slow drip when I'm making a change. Otherwise, I don't feel like it sticks. But a couple of times when I have drawn a hard line in the sand, like I'm no longer going to purchase here. I'm not going to wear synthetic fibers, whatever. I feel like it actually becomes, you start to see how much it just did not matter. And if you just changed your mind, it would just change everything.
Yeah,
totally.
So speaking of, we were talking about, you were asking us about brands, and Emma and I both sort of, we don't exactly draw a blank, but to Emma's point, it's really hard to say this or that brand, because everybody needs to kind of cultivate what they're looking for, because there's so many boxes to check, and no brand checks all of them. And you have to say, what are your priorities? And sort of decide for yourself. But I will say this, it's, sustainability, sustainable clothing, earth-friendly clothing, and all that stuff. There's such buzzwords now. So I just want to say, watch out for these buzzwords. And if you really are serious about getting sustainable clothing, dig deep into what a company says that they do. Dig deep. Look, as much information on the website, and even you go beyond that if you can. For instance, okay, I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, I agree with you though, because I feel like there's a lot of greenwashing that happens, and it's like I was looking at a company, and it's like, okay, they've got some organic cotton stuff going on. They're a B Corp, so they're B certified. It's kind of like buying organic produce, which is better than buying non-organic produce, but it doesn't mean it's not been touched by some of the inconvenient truths of the industry at large. And that's where it's like a home gardener is controlling every single part. Making your own clothes is way harder than growing a tomato. In my opinion. But I think to kind of reinforce what you're saying, there are so many layers where things can get sort of convoluted, and it's not always, I mean, labeling is also sometimes par for the course, and you have to invest in getting the label to be a certain category or for people to give you respect and recognition, but it doesn't mean what people think.
Right. And
totally.
I will say one great example I like to always bring up is you're going to see marketing on clothing that is made out of recycled materials, maybe more specifically like recycled water bottles, right? And it's going to say earth-friendly. It's going to say green. It's going to say good for the environment. It's going to say do your part and buy this jacket that's been made out of recycled water bottles. We're keeping these water bottles out of the ocean. Okay, so that sounds like a good thing, right? Number one, the actual amount of water bottles that are actually recycled is just a very small percentage compared to the number that are produced and used every day and thrown in the trash and on the beaches and everywhere. So So the amount that this industry of recycling into clothing is actually, taking back and making something out of it is really small and ineffective. And also, you are, again, you're wearing plastic on your body, and you are contributing to the growing problem of microplastic pollution, because those things shed little tiny microscopic shards of plastic everywhere. So what I say to that is, don't fall for that. And people say, well,
I think the bottom line is like, don't take any marketing that's like, this is good, as a reason to buy something.
Right.
Like the marketing behind like, this is how we do things should be after you've decided that you're going to buy something that you really need it and, it needs to fill something. Then that's when you tick the boxes of like, okay, does this fall in line with the values of what I'm looking for? But you should never feel like you should buy something because it's a certain way.
Yeah.
I'm saying that to myself. I do.
Yeah.
So that's just like, you don't need to buy that.
If you need a jacket, for instance, and you go to buy one and you see two jackets sitting there, and one says, oh, this is earth friendly, this is good for the environment, and the other doesn't, don't think you're doing the environment a favor by buying that jacket. I would say, go to the thrift store.
Yeah.
Get a jacket. There's great jackets at the thrift store. And maybe that's oversimplified for some people, but that's how I operate. I rarely buy anything new, because enough clothes exist on the planet right now for nobody to find for a long time.
So I do have a couple of things for someone who's listening who's like maybe not ready to just like only buy things from the thrift store. I do buy new things. I am one of these people that spends money on these sweet little independent designers on Instagram because I love them.
Yeah.
And the truth is that I don't buy them a lot because my budget won't allow it. And it's fine. I don't need a lot of clothes. And I think I spend a lot less money on clothes than I used to, even though I'm buying, I might buy one pair of $200 jeans every 3 years that I wear all the time.
Yeah.
But I'm not, anyways, I just putting that out there. Like that's been my reality of like, I buy higher quality and spend more money on it and buy far less.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I will say that is, I think maybe more accessible to the masses is, I would never know this because they don't do a good job marketing it, which is like also maybe kind of sus, but in my book, I'm like, actually, it's kind of cool. The corporation behind J. Crew, I think it's just like J. Crew. They're doing amazing work in the regenerative ag space, and Madewell brand is also under that. And so not saying like full permission, just like go buy all J. Crew and Madewell, but I do like, as far as brands go, there are like bigger brands that you just don't know about because they don't have to play the greenwashing game because they're making enough money, they're fine, but they're actually doing some cool work in impactful ways because they're so big that it actually makes a difference. So
very cool.
We were at a conference recently, and like J. Crew was there. J. Crew they weren't sponsoring it or anything. They were just like on a panel, and I was like, oh, interesting. So I will give that tidbit that like Madewell, J. Crew, like it might not be that every single thing that is in the store is like earth friendly and green, but as far as like corporations doing cool stuff, it happens.
Yeah. And I think that's amazing.
I just want to clarify that I don't mean to imply that I never buy anything new. I do buy new things, but it's pretty rare and it's very intentional, and I'm very, very specific about it. You were asking me about my sweater.
Yeah.
Before we started, and so this is a sweater that it's a 100% organic cotton sweater from LL Bean that I bought several years ago. And I was telling you, it's like my uniform. I wear it all the time. And I even made the decision to buy another one this year because it's just so useful to me.
Well, I was traveling from Tennessee back here to California last week and was packing really intentionally because I only want to carry on, and I wanted to, I'm like one of those women likes to get dressed every day and just like start my day off ready to go. And I realized that when I'm looking for something that I can wear all day in any environment, I'm choosing the same things in my wardrobe over and over. And so for the day, I had on like a Jenny Kane sweater that, full disclosure, was given to me from as like an influencer thing. But it's like a really nice all cotton like fisherman knit, and they're pricey, like $300, $400 sweater. Old Levi's and these Lucchese cowboy boots that are my absolute favorite that I just wear nonstop. And I was like, the cool thing to wear, like all the influencers are wearing these like matching athleisure sets and like the new sweats and the crew neck and the thing. And I was like, but I actually just feel like I grab these investment pieces that I have in my closet, and the most expensive things I have are actually not like beautiful dresses or fancy Gucci or whatever. They're actually just like very, very well made staple basics that I've had for 5 years plus that work every single day. And it's like, as I mean, and maybe this is because I'm like, I'm closer to 40 than 30 at this point. But I'm like, that's actually what I want my wardrobe to consist of, are these beautiful basics that are timeless and have high, again, I keep saying, but like high integrity. So I don't know, for anyone out there that wants to splurge, it's like, if you splurge on the right things, you don't really have to do it again, to your point.
Yeah. And I think you make such a good point too about like conceived value and like what we think good prices are and stuff for things, because yes, to your point, like a very simple, unassuming fisherman sweater that has like great materials and was knit by someone who was paid well and didn't fly around the world 20 times and go on a shipping container that crashed into like, oh my gosh, all that stuff is like so crazy. Like a shipping container full of our stuff. Like, don't get me started. Anyways, that having been through the process, like I get why that costs $300, $400.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Everybody paid along the way fairly. The animals treated humanely.
Yeah.
That's what it costs.
Yeah.
But it's not, but we're not used to that. We're used to, here's this Birkin bag that costs $12,000 because we can, it's not like these smaller brands and like slow fashion. And I think some people actually still think this. So this is for anyone who is confused. Like, it's not like people slap on slow fashion sustainable and I'm charging more because I say that I am. Like, it's not, you're not paying for the label. Like you're paying for the process. You're actually paying for like the product. Yes, you're paying the true cost. Exactly. So I think that's still a lot of it is ingrained because a lot of us our age who grew up through the NAFTA, like all of a sudden clothes were like affordable. And this is a whole other conversation about like buying status and things. That's very like American. Like we can just like buy our way into like looking like we have more money because we can buy this like $60 water bottle that makes us look like we can afford $60 water bottles, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, it's like a different category. It's like, it's not even, I just love that you pointed that out because I feel similarly. Like I have a closet of like, I love my clothes, but they've become kind of, staple stuff that I'm wearing all the time. And my jeans that I spent at one day or at some point I would have thought, I could never spend that much money on a pair of like handmade wooden shoes. Why would I ever do that? But now they're like, I'm obsessed with these and I would buy 3 more pairs, but I don't actually need them. And it's nice that I don't need them because they're so expensive.
Like, totally.
It's just a different category.
For sure.
I want to jump in here and say something. I would like to see us reframe the phrase, a good price. Because what a good price means now in our culture is that you can get something as cheaply as possible. You don't have to spend much money to get this thing where the perceived value is much greater. That's what we talk about when we say a good price. I would love to see us reframe that to mean a good price on something is something where all the way down the line, everybody was treated fairly, including the earth. Every hand that touched that, the ground that it came out of, everybody that had to do with getting that thing to you was treated fairly, and you're going to pay for that. And I would love to see the point where someone will walk into something and you see that $10 t-shirt and say, I'm not going to buy that because I'm suspicious. That is not a good price. That is a price that reflects oppression, exploitation, extraction, environmental devastation. That is not a good price. I think we're a long way from people actually thinking that way, but that's what, that would be cool, wouldn't it?
I love that. So this is kind of going to sound silly, but to your point, I was just I follow James Vanderbeek on Instagram, and he is a great follow. He's a crunchy dad. He gardens. He's a little bit woo-woo. He's very philosophical. We're talking about James Vanderbeek from what was that show? Dawson's Creek, that he's an actor.
Oh,
okay.
And he just, so he's a very well-known actor and celebrity, not as much now as like in the 90s, but he was like, we have our days filled with some of these like completely arbitrary and false victories. He was talking about how he waited and waited and waited for a spot at the gym to park. That was like the closest parking spot he could get, right outside the door of the gym. And he's saying to himself, I'm going to the gym to get a workout. Why on earth does it matter if I get the closest parking spot? I should be parking as far away as possible to like get more exercise in. And his point was kind of like, all throughout our days in our lives, we are we've created these false victories where it's like you're actually not winning anything at all. Not only like from anyone else, you're not going to get an award for getting that parking spot, but you're also like not enhancing your life. And you've somehow hung your hat on this weird inner victory. And I feel like that it's similar with clothing, where it's like you're not getting a good deal for buying a $10 t-shirt. Actually, you shouldn't be patting yourself on the back. It just kind of made me think of that, where it's like I totally get what you're saying. It's like we should be going to the store and thinking like, "Ooh, this is what it's worth. That's a good price. This is worth having." It's like making an investment in yourself, in the land, in your future. And I think about that now ever since I had a daughter, and I look at my clothes, like important pieces of clothing where I've like worn them to something special or in a special photo. And I think about giving it to Georgia. It changes the way I perceive the value and what I paid for it too, where I'm like, well, I could hand this down to George. Yeah. So it's, it's worth more to me then as well.
It's also fun if you really have to buy your $10 t-shirt. You can thrift. We love thrifting.
Yeah.
It's a great way to spend.
I know. I need to be doing more thrifting. I think right now with like all the kids, just thinking about like sorting through, anyways, story for another day. Okay. My last question for you gals, and each of you, I'm going to try and force you to choose one. Your favorite book when it comes to gardening, nature, maybe slow fashion.
There's so many, Bailey.
I know. Maybe two if you have to give me two.
Gardening, slow fashion, just all the stuff that we deal with.
Yeah.
So, we talk to so many people and we read their books, and there's just so many good ones. So I'll just tell you, I can't say favorite, but I'll say some just really good, meaningful books.
Okay.
And these are fairly recent, like in the last year. We Are the Ark by Mary Reynolds.
I love Mary Reynolds. Okay.
Yes, that's been a very influential book to me. And I don't know how much you want me to talk about each of these books, but so that
you were just just a quick sentence. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So she totally turns the idea of gardening upside down, and she reframes it in the sense of our whole approach to gardening historically has been backwards.
Yeah.
And it's very fascinating and has really changed my approach. And then I also just love Maria Rodale's Love Nature Magic.
Mm-hmm.
Love Nature Magic, Shamanic Journeys into the Heart of My Garden.
Okay.
And I just love that so much because she just takes the relationship to gardening and the garden and the land around you to just a whole new level where you're really, really entering into it, literally entering into the spirit of it. So I really adore those two books. And there are many more. Those are just the first that come to my mind from recent. Yes. We do a lot of reading. We do a lot of talking to authors. That's what I just love that so much about the podcast and all the interviews. I just feel like we get to talk deeply with all these like really cool people and thinkers and ideators. And it's just a privilege. It's thrilling. Yeah.
I would say too, I think one that I share is the Love, Nature, Magic. That one's really sweet. It's like a collection of essays. And it also is really interesting because you think of like shamanic journeying as something that's like really inaccessible and something you have to like do a lot of drugs and go to South America, but that's not what it is. So definitely worth a read.
Next podcast is going to be talking about Mary doing ayahuasca. Like, I know it.
Yes, yeah.
Our plant medicine journey. I'm kidding. No, I actually have, my great aunt was a shaman, so I'm all about it.
Okay. You would love
super cool. You would love this. I would also add Braiding Sweetgrass for anyone who hasn't read it yet. I feel like everyone's read it, but it was very, I mean, I think about the book almost every day. So
it's your Roman Empire.
Yeah, truly.
No, I loved Braiding Sweetgrass as well. And I feel like it took me a long time to read it. Like it kind of took, it took me a minute to get sucked into it. And also it's heavy. It's a little bit heavy, but then you start to really like be in it with Kimmerer. I'm like blanking on her first name. Robin. You start to be really in it with her on her like personal journey, and then the story begins to feel more like a story and less, because it's a must read. Like it's a literal like for your life syllabus must read. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
But it took me a minute to get into it, and then once I did, I was like, I'll never recover from wanting to go on a trip and like eat cattails with her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Bailey, if you ever want to read it again or engage with it again, I listened to it I did both. But I listened to it on audiobook and she narrates it and it's like really wonderful in her voice.
Okay.
So yeah, I found that because I agree. It was a little sometimes hard to get through some of it.
Because just dense. Just dense.
It wasn't amazing, but it was dense. Yeah. But the audiobook was and I don't say that about all the books either because some of the books are like way better not audio, but
yeah. I love that. Thank you. Okay, ladies, where can everyone find you? Where's the best place for people to be like in your universe?
Go, Emma.
Well, definitely follow the Good Dirt podcast. That's our favorite place. We are on Instagram. Our handle is We Are Lady Farmer. We're not the best content you're going to get from us is on the podcast, but we usually post on Instagram when there's new podcasts. So we also have a Substack called The Almanac that you should definitely subscribe to. And if you are unfamiliar with Substack, don't worry. It's not another thing you have to know about unless you want to. It's truly just an email list. And you'll be getting we love it because it's a home for all of our writing and community in email form. So yeah, sign up for our Substack. That's all on our website, which is at ladyfarmer.com.
Love that.
Or in our show notes, we'll send Bailey the link. So they're linked in the bottom of this episode. And then also, of course, on our Instagram, you'll find the link to our Substack and our website and everything. So
beautiful.
First is podcast, then I would say Substack, then Instagram is We Are Lady Farmer.
I love it. Thank you guys so much for hanging with me. I feel like we could go off on so many tangents and talk forever and ever. So to be continued, but thank you. And I hope you guys have a great day.
Thank you, Bailey.
So much. Yes. This was fun.
Absolutely. I hope this episode has been balm for the soul and inspiration for the heart. I would love if you left a review to let me know your thoughts or anything you're interested in learning. And I'm so grateful that you found this space. For more information on any techniques, recipes, or ideas mentioned, visit us at baileyvantassel.com/podcast.